Yes people, what's happening? Kepler here. Today we're going to look at programming raw house drums. So we're going to look at everything that's involved from the sample selection right through to the programming, to the processing. And we're going to focus on the particular style of rough swung house, labels like Slapfunk and Dungeon Meat, and also a lot of artists that are coming out of the Netherlands at the moment in the underground. We're going to look at how to get those really fat low end drums through processing, what samples we want to use, how to get the right swing and groove going on, and essentially what we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to build an entire drum track from scratch, step by step, so that if you do struggle with your drums, we're going to be able to see how the process works from beginning to end. And we're going to do some group processing, some parallel compression, some saturation, bit of EQ. All of that's going to be inside this tutorial. So if you do struggle with drums or you wanted to get those really fat sounding raw house drums, we're going to cover that in this section. So let's dive into Ableton and let's make a start. What we need to get right first is the sample selection. And if we do that, it means that we're going to have less processing to do. So I'm going to show you a few sample packs that I would reach for if I was going for this particular sound. And there are plenty out there, but some of them are more difficult to find. So I've got some here. There's this Paradise Rinse from Scott Diaz, which is a Native Instruments pack, which is really good. I've covered this before, but if you go into the drum section, you've got individual one-shots, which sound great. There's some really good one-shot hits in there. And we've also got this Raw House, which is on Sample Market. There is some, these are a bit cleaner, but there's some nice ones in there. That's a nice kick. So yeah, we want those sort of fat kicks. I'm also going to look at how we can make them ourselves. And then also another really good place to look, I've covered this in another video before, but it's another Scott Diaz selection of packs. In here, he runs an online shop for sample packs called Nightlife Audio, and inside Nightlife Audio is some really good packs. And again, they've got these really nice individual, really well processed kicks, and yeah, there's lots of other individual drums in there, and there's also some really good loops in there that you could use as well to layer over your drums and stuff, which we're going to look at. We've also got these two packs actually from Brother, and one is called Enter the Dungeon, which is arguably the best pack for this sound. And if you go in here, you've got they're paired kicks with snares. You've got these kick drums, etc. I'm also working on a pack for this at the moment. It's going to be revealed soon. So if you do make this sound, stay tuned for that. I'm going to be making a Raw House pack, which is going to be available in the store, which is going to be announced soon. But in the meantime, these are the ones that I'd recommend. Also, this other Brother one is pretty good. You can get these from Brothers Gumroad. So we're going to build entirely from scratch our own drums, and what we're going to do, we'll get rid of those audio channels. We're going to just keep this MIDI channel, and we're going to just work in the arrangement view so that we can see what's going on visually with the MIDI clips. I find that a lot easier, although I do sometimes write in this, but I think for the purpose of this it will work nicely. We're going to set up just a 4-bar loop here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate a few times so that we've got lots of different elements. Now, I always use a drum rack for my drums because it just gives me more flexibility. And the reason that we separate them out into different channels like this is so that we can process them differently, because a kick is going to be processed differently to a snare, to a clap, etc., etc. So we're going to name these different colors. You can even color code them if you want, but I'm just going to leave them as they are. Kick, clap, snare, hats. We might even separate them out as closed hats and open hats, and then we will have perks. And I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just do an extra channel there for perks as well, just in case we want to add in some toms, which are a bit more in the bottom end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and show you an example of how I would go about processing kicks using a couple of different techniques. So maybe you don't have access to these packs that we've spoken about, these sample packs, and you want to work out how to get nice fat sounding kicks. So I'm going to basically just get a normal kick that's just a nice clean. So maybe we'll go to this Boo Records. So let's go in here. It's a selection that you can get for free, which has got lots of different bass drums in. So that's not probably the best example to use. I'm wondering if there's like, let's go and type in kicks here. Yeah, we just want maybe like a 909 kick basically. Yeah, so even a kick like that. So what we want to do is just, we've got quite a lot of tail on there, so we're going to reduce the decay, and I do it in the one shot mode. You can press warp if you want, but also in beats mode it's fine. If you do a fade out like this, it will shorten the kick, and we're starting to get somewhere with that. So that's a nice sounding punchy kick, but there's a few things that we can do to get that even fatter. One of the plugins that I like to use for this is a Decapitator by Sound Toys, and this is a compressor and a saturator, and it fattens up drums, and there is 3 presets in here, and yeah, these are all really good for this. So if I now program in a pattern, we can start to work on this drum, on this kick drum. So we'll just have a standard 4/4 kick pattern in there like this. So you can hear how fat that kick is now. You can even push the drive even more. We've just got to watch that the level here isn't clipping. So that's without, and then you can really start to have nice fat sounding kicks with the saturation. This E is really nice, but you've got these other styles of saturation here. You can change the tone so that we're going into the low end. And then you can put the punish mode on. What I'd recommend with the punish mode is backing off on the mix and the drive a little bit. And then what we can also do is like work with the transposition of the pitch. So essentially, if you don't have a sample pack for this type of sound, then you can, through things like saturation, get things sounding really nice. Also, things like decimort work really nice on certain things, not so much the kicks, but you can get that nice bit of top end in there. If you wanted to add that into a certain sample, but it works really nicely on hats and that, and we'll get to that in a sec. Also, another thing to use, maybe you don't have, you've just got the stock plugins from Ableton. Drum bus is excellent. So let's see what we can do with this. So this is without drum bus. We add this on, and that just adds so much fatness to the kick. We can add this crunch in there. We can work on the and we can just bring down the dry wet. That is a really fat kick. And then what I would be tempted to do is add in an EQ afterwards. Just take out some of this really flabby bottom end from about 30. You could even do a little bit of low pass in there just to take out some of the top. But yeah, you can do a lot of processing in the box with Ableton without any third-party plugins from just a very clean standard 909 sample. But let's say we do have access to these really well processed kick drums. Let's take a look at some of the Scott Diaz ones, for example. Recommend his plugin, his sample packs a lot. So you're going to drum hits. Let's have a listen to some of these. We want something really fat. Let's go into these drum hits here. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that is nice, I think. But either of those is nice. This one's got a bit more top end. So let's go with this. Let's get that on there. Now, you could quite easily work with these top loops. So but what we're going to do is we're going to work on these ourselves. So let's go in here. Let's get some claps in there. That's nice. Okay, so we're going to program in the claps now on the offbeats like this. Just like a standard house beat. I might flip through some of these. See, both of those are nice. I like this one. Then I tend to go with the hats next. So let's get some hats in there. And this is where the programming is quite important. Because what I like to do is I'll get a load of closed hats in like this. So I'm just selecting the ones that say like closed. And I'm going to drag them on to here. So I've got loads of different ones to use. Now, one characteristic of this particular style, so if we're talking about Dungeon Meat and Slapfunk and sort of like Dennis Quinn and the artists that are making this style of music at the moment. Even Boss, who's part of the Studio Orbit team, is making some really nice garagey, US garage, UK garage, tough house vibes. We need some swing. So I like to just go into the groove pool on Ableton and I like to type in MPC. And I'm generally using these MPC 3000 16th swing presets for this, and I usually go from a flitter between 61 to 68, but I'm often using 64 and 68. So let's go with 68. Let's get it nice and swung, and then let's try and program in. So I'm going to go back into here, by the way, to the other MIDI clips that we've got and make sure that everything, all your drum elements, even the kicks, are all swinging with the same groove preset. So, okay, let's go in here and we're going to just start by putting in just a closed hi-hat on those third beats all the way through. We're going to bring it down a level because it's quite harsh. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just highlight it. I'm going to flick through. We're going to push the tempo up a bit as well to 127. So I'm quite liking that hat. And then we're going to get some extra little hats in there. So I tend to put hats going into others like this. So that's really nice. I like that. Let's keep going. And we just have these little variations. It sounds garagey already. So we'll carry that over and we'll just add in little subtle variations. Okay, cool. The only thing I'm thinking is there's a lot of reverb on this particular sample, so... Oh, that's nice. I like that a lot. But let's just take a look at what's going on with the EQ with these hats, because I've got a feeling there's quite a lot of bottom end kicking around. Yeah, there we go. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to treat these hats in here so we'll get a bit of panning going on. So basically, wherever the hats are hitting, let's get just a pan on those ones. Cool, it just gives it a little bit of stereo width. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use the Decimor from D16. You can actually get this as on a discount if you're a Studio Orbit member now. You just go to your accounts page and you will have a link there to be able to get, I believe, it's a substantial percentage off anyway. So yeah, MPC 60 preset that opens whenever you open this plugin is great. So we're just going to just start it off here and we're going to slowly bring it down until we get like a tone that we like. Quite like that. I'm going to just bring that main hat down. Okay, cool. So I'm going to bring the whole hats down there. Okay, the next thing, and this is where we really add in the groove, and we're going to start adding in some snares and some ghost snares. So let's go into the Brother pack now and take a look at go back into my samples folder here. So in this pack, we've got some, going to the Enter the Dungeon one, we've got some snares in here. Again, I'm just going to drag all of these snares onto a channel. And we need to be just programming in some nice little grooves. So let's just keep these things looping. I'm going to shorten it a bit. Make sure we've got our groove on. I'm going to bring the snare down. That's nice. Try. Oh, nice. Yeah, something like that is nice. But I think what we'll do is we'll go in and change the the velocity manually. Yeah, nice. Just playing around really. Let's try. Yeah, stuff like that works quite nice, but we'll keep it quite simple. Yeah, hang on. Let's find a nice. Oof. That's a really nice one for a little roll, I think, that one. So we do like that, but we'll have that happening at the end here. So let's extend it out. Let's see what we've got. We need to move that along. Oops. We need to move these two notes along so it's the same again. Here. Yeah, that's quite nice. Okay. Yeah, wicked. Well, let's keep that as like a have an extra note. Yeah, cool. What we're going to do is we're also going to add in some manual velocity changes to our hats that we've got on here as well. So let's zoom right out. These ones in particular, I think, are feeling a little bit robotic. So essentially, we want there to be quite a lot of swing and like natural groove going on. So I tend to draw in some manual velocity changes, just make sure that all of these velocities are just sort of almost a little bit random. So it just feels like it's a real drummer, or it just gives it that groove. And then what I also do is I go into the MIDI effects, and you'll have seen me do this in pretty much every track, but we get this add some random on, pull it right back like this. That'll put on the hats. And maybe we can get a fatter kick in there actually. So if we go kick drums. Oof, that is fat. Some of these kicks are ridiculous. Oof. So what we can do as well is get some little double kicks going on in there. Maybe a second kick. Let's find one that'll... Maybe that. So let's try something here with a second kick. Oof. Yeah, there we go. I'm liking that. Yeah, lovely. I think we'll have a little variation where that isn't there. Yeah, and then that is there. Sweet. Okay, and then the second time round we've got that double kick in. So you can add these little variations. So you can add like an extra few rolls in here if you wanted to, like this. And then I think we need some like really nice crispy hat situation going on. So if we go into open hats, let's try going into some of these raw packs that we looked at before. In here, hi-hats, we want an open hat now. Oof, yeah, I like that. Again, let's just try dragging all of these in there, but let's remember Colosseum 1 because that sounded wicked. Loads in this one, sick pack. Okay, so let's just shorten it again so we can get flavour for which one we want. Yeah, so what was it called? It was called Colosseum 1, wasn't it? And then, yeah, we just copy this over. And we get our swing on there. Let's just try a few others. I just heard a triplet in there that was like an accident, but it sounded wicked. So if we right click and we go to triplet grid, we can actually draw in like a... Where is it? Maybe there that I heard. Maybe it was like... Sometimes hard to get right. What might be better is if we go into this mode and we just do like 132 like this, and yeah, just get like yeah, you can get, sometimes they work nice. It works best when you change the velocities. Maybe it'll work better with a shorter hat. Cool, yeah, try out the short hats. Let's just go back in and put that in there. Let's try doing it in here with this. Yeah, there we go. Sweet. Sick. I really like that. So let's just bring those velocities down because they're quite loud. But yeah, here we go. Let's have a listen. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, nice. Okay, so let's just keep that open hat going. I'm going to just maybe go back to the original. Sick, really coming together now. So what we need to potentially look at now is how we can maybe use some toms. And actually, one of the techniques that is used often in this style is using the toms as a bass. So if I can just try it on this, we load it into a sampler like this, maybe take out some of the attack and bring the volume down. So yeah, you can play a tom in as a bass line, so that's another little tip for this tutorial, but we're going to just try getting some perks in. We're going to rename this just toms, and I will just drag all of these toms in there. And what we'll do is we'll just see if we can just get like in between the kicks, just have things grooving to just add a bit something a bit special in the bottom end. Get the groove on it. They're quite... let's go for some other toms. If we go into... let's see what we've got. Stuff like that works nice. Those two. I think just a classic sounding tom. Like, yeah. Cool. We've got to get a bass line in at the end of this tutorial, surely, because this, I'm really liking this loop. I will definitely be using it. Cool. We'll go into then the perks in this pack and see if we can layer in some additional perks. Yeah. These are the ones, man. Sick. Okay, get those dragged in. Right, wicked. Let's just see if we can get a pattern in there now. We don't want a tambourine, we want... yeah, things like that. See, these are nice. Yeah, because it's playing off the other elements. You've got to listen. Like when we've got that triplet hat, we want this to be talking to that. And we'll copy that over again, but we'll do something different the second time round. Something like that. And yeah, you're just creating like a call and response between your little drum elements, really. So I quite like that. I think that works. I'm not sure about that hit there. We'll probably go in and change that. It's a bit random. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That's the one. I mean, you could then add in some shakers. So if we just copy that over, delete the MIDI clip, you've got a tambourine and shaker. So something along these lines. Yeah, you could just copy that, get the groove on there. Yeah. And there we have it. That's a nice fat drum loop. You could then, if you wanted to have it even fatter than that, I think that's pretty sweet, but you could then go in and start to add in your additional top loops, your little perk loops, things like that. So if you go into packs like this, I don't think it's necessary at this point though, you know, that's a really nice stripped back groove, but maybe something like this. Yeah, works pretty well actually, to be honest. This one. That is sick actually. Yeah, so I think it'll get much busier after that. But then you can start to think about getting a really nice, ridiculously good rolling little bass line in there. So why don't we just try and do that just for the sake of it. So if we go into here and we go into bass, that is, yeah, a bit of me. Cool, let's see if we could just play something in with that groove we've got. Cool, let's quantize that, get a swing on it, bring it down in volume, and I think we've got ourselves a quick loop in half an hour. So it's a bit of latency there, so just fixing the playing a little bit. So let's just look at some group processing first before we go. Let's group all of everything but our kick. So let's just go in and create a group. Now we can treat this together. So what we really want to be doing is just getting an EQ in there first of all, because we've added in a lot of saturation and stuff. Sometimes that can increase the chances of you getting some of these resonances. So we can put soothe on our group, but also let's just get rid of all of the bottom end. And then what we can potentially do is add decimort to all of our drum group. And what this does, I find, is it glues everything together when we start to group process things. But we'll bring the dry wet right down. We don't want to be doing too much here, and we need to be. So that's with. It just takes away that clean digital sheen that we really don't want with this kind of sound. We're going to put everything before the EQ though. And then what I want to do is I want to be doing some compression to the group as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to use a form of compression called New York style compression. And if we go into the compressor here, it's essentially going to do it in parallel. So it means that we're going to have a dry signal, which is the original signal of the drums, and a really heavily compressed signal next to it. So you might have seen that there is, like in the glue compressor, you might have like a rock parallel room or a full parallel. So if you were to add that, and we'll just have a listen to what that does. So the dry completely down. That's what our signal sounds like without any processing. And then this is the fully compressed signal. So we want to mix the two. So we've got this really fat compressed signal and the normal signal. So I think that's a really nice sort of sweet spot. And we can even add the decapitator. But again, we need to just be making sure on the volume. But because we've got no other elements on the track, I don't really need to be gain staging at this point because we've only got the kick to mix with the drums. So I'm going to put in the drum fattener 2. But what you can see is this high cut's taking away a lot of the high frequencies. Let's push that up. So now we've got this, it's all glued together and it's really compressed and fat. And then let's get the kick in there. So there you go, that is how you make nice raw house drums. If there's any other kind of styles where you'd like to see me do drum programming, just how I have with this, then please let me know on the Discord, and any feedback, as always, is welcome on there as well. But nice one, thanks for watching.